Good afternoon, everybody. It's 12:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and welcome to what is the last MOCA weekly town hall of 2025. We made it. The whole year of town halls, not bad. I wonder how many we've done of these. It has to be in the 30s, right? We've been doing this since February, March.
It's a long hallway. I don't know.
Has it been that long? Did we not start later in the year? I don't know.
It's such a great question. I have no idea.
Yeah,
We've been doing this.
but I mean, certainly we've had a lot. That's for sure.
Doing this since at least like the summer, right? So, anyways, this is the last one of the year. A week from today is Christmas. We will be off. A week from then is New Year's. We will also be off. So we will be back with everybody on the early January, maybe like the 6th. I'm not sure what the day is. But Max, we have Untitled and Daim below me. And I thought we could start today by, just kind of recapping what happened this year. Not in totality, but I've been thinking a lot about what the kind of overarching message of 2025 was within crypto art. Every week I write a newsletter for our Substack, and one of like the three like pillars of that Substack is just like the news from crypto art of the day, or of the week rather. And for weeks it's been challenging to find anything going on. It's not new altogether that we are in periods of quiet and activitylessness. Daim and Natalia, you're both artists. You probably know this as well as I do, if not better. But I was thinking about what kind of defines 2025, and what we'll look back on and say, like, this was the year where this happened. And kind of ironically, we say this every year, but I think this is the year that like crypto art as we know it kind of perished. And I don't mean that crypto art itself as artists and as a space went away, right? We can debate the death of crypto art forever. I'm talking about like the literal nomenclature of crypto art. The last kind of like big news item a couple weeks ago was this 010 event at Art Basel, Miami. And, I read a lot about it, and I saw pictures, and I saw videos, and of course there was that Beeple piece, and a Dmitry Cherniak piece, and an Eggshells piece, and there was this new kind of token frame kind of invention called Layer, which was made by the guy who made DeviantArt. All these different things. It has seemed that the crypto of it all, the crypto of crypto art, is becoming less and less important as crypto art kind of merges into wider digital art acceptance. Right, there was that famous, or now infamous, tweet from ABC News calling Beeple a digital artist from South Carolina. And that is seemingly what crypto art and all this blockchain-based art is seen as from an outside perspective. It is just digital art with a new technology at its core, right? The NFT distribution mechanism, for reasons that we can get into later, is kind of being left out. And the people within the movement who are, I think, pushing these pieces into museums like the Toledo Museum of Art, into galleries like, or into shows like Art Basel Miami, are willfully, I'm not even saying unintelligently, but they're willfully leaving the crypto out of it in favor of incorporation into this wider digital art thing. So I just talked a lot. So
Fuck them.
Your opinion?
That's my take on that in brief.
Why do you think that, or why, I suppose, are you?
I feel like when outsiders term crypto art digital art, I think at least some of the time it's coming from probably a well-intentioned place of trying not to trigger the Luddite, anti-crypto, anti-AI masses into conniption. But I think when it's done by crypto artists,
Mhm.
then I think it's coming from a place of this notion that they are now at a point where they can shed that uncomfortable baggage and sort of glow in the glory of the modern wonder of being a digital artist making digital art, which to me is such a ridiculous thing, because digital art is not viable for the most part as art without tokenization.
Hmm.
And prior to tokenization, digital art, with like precious few exceptions, by very, very few highly established artists, prior to crypto art, digital art was like 99%, if not 99.99%, cool pics to scroll through on DeviantArt and Twitter that nobody will ever do anything with, and nobody will ever treat in any meaningful way as actual art. So to me,
Shots fired.
what's that?
Shots fired at DeviantArt.
And I say that having been at one point on DeviantArt. Like the earliest stuff I started minting in 2019, when I guess when I became a crypto artist, were like textured biomorphs, and like much earlier incarnations of some of that same stuff I had long before put on DeviantArt. And like that experience, and even the Twitter experience, just led me to believe that like doing that with digital art fundamentally contextualizes it as something that in fact isn't art, because art gets displayed at exhibitions. Art even as the financialization is like a double-edged sword, art is purchased and sought after.
But I think that that's part of what is happening with the morphing together of digital art and crypto art. Is like, for so long, these artworks in a mainstream setting, right? We have to just make this big schism between like the people who are in the know and the people who are not in the know. But all of this art, which we believe should be capital A art, should be treated as artistic objects and sought after. The NFT of it all was anathema to people to whom NFT had become kind of a dirty word. And I think that there's like, whether that's good, bad, how it happened is kind of immaterial. I think that it still holds true. When I was looking at the we were talking,
I mean,
the beeple, regular animals at Art Basel, when it was being dragged for all sorts of, I think, perfectly critical reasons. One of the things that would keep coming up was like its relationship to NFTs, how these animals were creating NFTs kind of autonomously, and how that somehow said something about Beeple's, I don't know, lack of connection to the real world, or the I don't know, the depersonalization of the art by its relationship to crypto. So I think that like what we're seeing in some part is an attempt to obfuscate the NFT,
to whitewash it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's obviously, it's been a tumultuous year for many reasons, kind of across the board, especially in the arts, especially across culture. I think in my mind, I always look at a new technology, especially crypto art, especially crypto in general. I look at it through the lens of like, city planning because I come from that background, and I feel like this is the gentrification moment. I mean, no cool city, especially a neighborhood that is, a little bit underground, grassroots, artsy. You have warehouses where, artists are doing interesting things and it has that energy. Those neighborhoods are always in motion. They always evolve. And the gentry arrives with their coffee shops and with their kind of more formalized, commodification of what was cool in that neighborhood, and it's money is made off of it, and that doesn't pick everyone up with it. And that's part of what we're seeing, I think, is a lot of artists who are very central to the crypto art era are not being picked up with the same kind of like momentum. And we're seeing, by and large, this is turning into a traditional art kind of moment because there's, the horses have been chosen, the fastest ones, and so to speak, and that's what's being displayed. But yeah, in my mind, I don't necessarily view it as bad, to be honest, because I just think that's part of the growth and evolution of ideas, of technologies. And it's not, it doesn't mean we can't mourn it, or it doesn't mean we can't be upset about it or complain. But I think to me, it feels like this was an inevitable byproduct of like a mass adoption moment. You have, I mean, talk about adoption. Like, this is a rapid fire year for adoption in crypto. And yeah, I don't know. So in my mind, I look at it as a crypto art as a neighborhood. And, the coffee shops are in, people are coming in and they're baking, fancy bread, and they're like selling expensive coffee now. And that's going to kind of move people to the fringes. There might be new neighborhoods to discover, but this is kind of that moment for crypto art.
I think the reason I see it as negative is because for me, and I think I recognize that my view is not perhaps universal, but in my view, the sort of I don't know what the word is. For me, it's not a mystery why NFT became a dirty word. And I think there are two fairly specific reasons. One is, two very specific people. And if you were around far enough back then, you probably know who basically made up a whole bunch of dumb shit that, on the face of it, should have been obvious to either of them was incorrect. And, made it seem like NFTs were, an ecological, apocalypse in the making.
Can you name
one of those two people eventually came out and kind of sort of disowned the initial big statement that was the source of a lot of what came after. The other person leaned into it and, like a fucking sociopath, kept repeating the lie. I'm not gonna name names. One of them seems like fucked up enough to sue. I made one attempt at one point to actually confront them about it, and it was like talking to an HR robot.
Can I jump in quickly?
Yeah.
I think that you're 100% right. The ecological kind of impact, right or wrong, definitely became a part of this, right? We're seeing it happen now with AI, this kind of joke where it's like, oh, that, creating this video called, an acre of rainforest in the Amazon had to be burned down to create this like AI generated video.
Yes.
Like, it's the same thing with like minting NFTs.
We could undo it all if Americans stopped watering their lawns, though.
It was the same thing with Bitcoin back before that.
Yeah.
Right? I think, however, I just want to add to that, the rampant over speculation on PFP assets.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, what I said, I think was one part, and I think the other part was the fact that crypto not crypto art necessarily, even though also partly crypto art, but the crypto community as a whole, and especially when it came to like crypto collectibles and stuff that's sort of like in between, like, if I want to be honest, probably a lot of art block stuff.
Mhm.
The public basically came to find NFTs. If they didn't find it apocalyptic already because of people lying and making up shit, they came to find it absolutely ridiculous because people were spending like $60,000 on cartoon monkeys and like whatever other variant of that we want to make up. And not only were they spending that amount of money, but it was also, of course, always wrapped in this faux and like pseudo intellectual series of justifications that nobody who
Yeah.
hasn't also spent $60,000 on a cartoon ape could possibly take seriously.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's hard to know of these two things. And I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head. Like, yeah, I think it's hard to know which of these two things was the cart and which was the horse and which was leading which. It almost seems like as soon as the Bored Ape price crossed $100,000, right, that the kind of ecological argument was already in place. So for whatever reason, right, this mix of two things, this like kind of internal sense of ickiness that these like ridiculous assets were being valued so highly, that whether that was the impetus and the justification for the ickiness became the ecological thing, or the ecological thing caused the ickiness, and then the sociocultural effects of having these ridiculous cartoon assets being valued at 6 and 7 figures. They were working in some kind of concert, but I think the concert was so effective that even today it's hard to like talk about NFTs and not have your eyes or not have eyes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, totally. But I guess the reason I find this sort of happy and enthusiastic whitewashing of themselves by crypto artists negative and like disturbing is because it feels like that is basically giving in to those two things, right? It's effectively, I realize that for a lot of people perhaps it's just practical considerations, but it does feel like, as part of a greater narrative, and probably even more so looking from the outside, it feels like an admission that those two things were true and right, and like, no, the fuck they weren't. Like, what does any of that bullshit have to do with all the shit that Yatrida put out, bringing Ethiopian culture to the blockchain?
Mhm.
What does that have to do with I don't know, Andres Del Vecchio's world building through his paintings? Like, there's so much incredible crypto art out there that couldn't be further removed from the bullshit
100%.
that is like primarily associated with NFTs. And I'm seeing that I'm clearly on the losing side of this
No,
whole
I think
thing, but
I think you're on the right side, right? Because I think all of what you're saying.
well, but the right side could still be the losing side.
No, but I
Yeah.
think you are very cogently explaining the impetus for the death of crypto art, right? Which is that all of this art deserves to be treated as art first, and an NFT, crypto, whatever second, right? Not to say that they aren't often related, that they aren't, that they don't need each other, the distribution mechanism isn't really important, that the kinds of long form generative algorithms that you can deploy on the blockchain aren't integral to a work. But the point is that when it comes to like social consideration, extricating the art of it from the crypto, from the NFT, from the hyper financialization of it, I think that there is I think that what you're talking about is a justification in a sense for the leaving behind of this nomenclature, which I'm not defending because
but he's calling it digital art and not saying the words crypto and NFT going to make it be treated more like art.
I think so.
Or is the fact that it's minted on chain and it is in fact crypto art and therefore ownable and purchasable is what is going to allow it to be treated as art.
I really,
and I think it's the latter.
Perhaps this is just a disagreement of like an optimist versus a pessimist point of view. I really do think that a lot of people have too strong, ingrained, careless associations with the verbiage here. Now, the negative one of the negative effects of this is that all of this incredible crypto art that was avowedly about crypto, was avowedly about the values, that's probably not going to eke into the next iteration of this, right? It has already been stricken. It will continue to be stricken. But I think that the bet that the kind of market makers are making, I think the bet that a lot of these artists are making, this upper kind of echelon that's trying to penetrate into the traditional art world, the bet that they're making is that yes, by leaving the crypto nomenclature behind, by referring to crypto as blockchain, I remember I wrote about the Toledo Museum of Art's Art of Algorithms exhibition. And I went through all of the materials on their website, right? And it was all these wonderful, there are 3 wonderful essays, including one by Regina Harsanyi. There were really thoughtful descriptions for all of the artworks. And crypto as a word, the word crypto was never mentioned. Whenever it was spoken about, it was blockchain art, right? That was the nomenclature they were using. And that does kind of remove you from the crypto of it all, right? Because in a sense, it's not inaccurate, right? Cryptocurrency is just an evocation of blockchain technology. NFTs are just another evocation of blockchain technology. So it's not incorrect. I don't know necessarily how this association became so deep-seated within the wider populace. But one of the things I think we have to consider about the traditional art world is that the patrons of it are older. They are not as technologically savvy.
Not forever,
but for now, right? And this, people who are
another decade.
Culture, they want this to happen now. We know that when crypto art was having its kind of coming out moment in 2021, when there's all this speculation, that most of the people buying it were like people who are crypto rich, and so they understood the mechanisms, they understood the culture of the technology around it. They were not afraid of it, and they embraced it. And I think as we see more people trying to reach out into the traditional art world, that assertion is going to be proven more and more false, because you have less and less people who are familiar with blockchain. When they are familiar with crypto at all, they may not have any kind of real understanding of the self-sovereignty of it all, the decentralization of it all, the power to the individual of it all, the grassroots the grassroots aspect of it all, which I think are very encouraging and very buttressing things about the movement that have not really been communicated to the general public. And every time that the Trump family enriches themselves with an NFT scheme, every time that a crypto billionaire like Do Kwon is sentenced to however long he was just sentenced to go to jail, like it's going to continue to associate crypto itself with criminal activity, with over speculation, with dangerousness. And it will continue to kind of build in certain circles this buzzword, or this kind of set of buzzwords about the negativity of it all. So I guess all I'm saying is I don't agree with what's happening, but I understand why it's happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on that part, we're on the same page. I don't know. I guess for me, this all just pessimistically makes me think that, like, if this really ends up going that way, then like clearly sooner or later we're gonna make up new words to use instead of AI, and both of these will be like case studies in how irredeemably dumb the average person is.
Maybe not dumb, but susceptible to cultural waves.
I
think that's too kind.
I think a lot of it, I mean, I say this a lot, probably way too much, but a lot of it is a product of the medium of communication that we have. When it comes to the kind of limited, people are digesting this technology through 140 whatever characters, right? Like all of this is being channeled through social media as a kind of like medium of exchange and knowledge sharing. Because of that, I think I don't think people are stupider, but I think their attention span is different. It's wired differently, and I do think like that has contributed both to the rise of NFTs, the virality of it, but also its decline. Like you have both in this kind of world of viral content and stories, because anything that comes up will come back down. It's part of how social media eats the world and consumes. So I think it feels in some way like a natural kind of like rise and fall for me. But I understand, like I agree with you guys. I think it's like I don't think it's correct. I don't think it's like a fair thing. But yeah, I don't know. To me, it all comes back to like, how are we communicating this? Very few people are actually trying to listen to a debate on a 1 hour, kind of podcast sort of situation or live stream.
Sort of like this one.
Yeah, right. They're going on a thread by
Damn
an influencer that pops up on their feed first.
I read this morning actually. I had read an interview. You remember the Coldplay concert thing, the Man and Woman from Astrologer? I had read an interview with the woman, right? This is kind of her first kind of formal interview, and a lot of the interview was about like actually discussing the context of what was happening in that moment, right? There was really no untoward activity. Both of them were separated from their partners. Like that was kind of their first like romantic moment. It wasn't like they were ongoing this affair. They had just kind of had a reaction, but the treatment that this woman specifically received at the hands of the internet, she's receiving death threats, right? There was an anecdote where she was at a gas station. Somebody told her that like there was no sin greater than adultery. Like you don't even deserve to be breathing the same air as me, right? No real context, no real exploration, just emotion, right? Just like internalization of facts and then creation of a narrative completely within people's own heads. And it was like really deleterious to this woman, this like poor fucking woman who just was like at a concert with her. She had a crush on her boss, and like finally something was happening. All of a sudden her life is destroyed. They don't have a relationship. Her, marriage is now, she was separated. Now she's divorced. Like her kids were being, teased at school and like really kind of fucked up. And I think just going back to what you said, Untitled, like this is just an evocation of the same thing, right? Which is like, there is an experience on social media. There is no real depth of exploration or thought. There is just kind of reaction that I was a part of too, right? I'm not somehow outside of this or better.
Did you also slut shame the lady at a
no, but of course, like
station?
And, on her behalf, I'm sure we joked about it on this town hall or on whatever video platform. Like that was the news of the day for whatever reason. There was, again, no further exploration of what was happening or the truth of the matter, or really no way to sit and be, really no desire to sit and be thoughtful with what was happening. It was more just like, here's what the internet's talking about. I'm just going to lend my voice in the same way that the voice is already kind of moving.
It's an addictive thing. Like it's an addiction that we participate in the narrative, get swept up by it, and it eventually will consume us. Like I think that's automatic too. What's that?
It's automatic. We don't think about it at this point.
No, yeah. You're participating by literally, you're contributing to it by pausing. This is the attention economy. You're pausing on something that lends value to it and makes it stronger on the timeline. So it's I mean, it's almost impossible to kind of like resist without going fully offline from that. But I think about this a lot with the mediums, because obviously I like virtual mediums, because I think, hey, here's something that's gives us a different sense of time, gives us a different sense of pace. Different discussions are had there because the kind of rules are different. Not saying it's better, or I'm not anti-reality, but in terms of Twitter, yeah, it's way better in terms of discussion, way better in terms of understanding an artwork, way better in terms of understanding a technology. So I think we are wildly consolidated right now for kind of a rare point in history where we're getting, X is the everything app, right? We're getting our news from it, where our jobs are on it, our social lives are on it, our
Yeah.
things are on it. Yeah. I mean, it's just that's a really wild thing, and how much power we've kind of lent that system.
And if I can connect, this discussion to maybe our next discussion, I often think about what would have happened to the metaverse as buzzword and technology if it had had a better steward than Mark Zuckerberg, and it had had a better kind of emissary culturally than the meta platform Horizon Worlds. Right. One of the problems with the metaverse was that when this buzzword was happening, right, when Facebook was changing its corporate name to Meta, was that the things that you would see coming out of Meta, what was to many people that grand expression of the metaverse, was this very just a subpar app, right? Horizon Worlds, which was Meta's like flagship platform, the graphics were bad, it was clunky, hard to use. It was super closed source from what I understand. People didn't like to use it. And then when we would see it being used in press conferences and demonstrations, it was always like a bunch of avatars sitting around a conference table, right? I this video.
So creative.
I think Mark Zuckerberg was talking to Oprah, maybe. I'm sorry if I get that wrong, but he was showing that you could change the color of your shirt like that in Horizon Worlds, and his shirt went from like gray to slate blue, and people dragged that, and so that became the association people had with the technology. There you go.
There's really no other way to change the color of your shirt on a video stream.
There you go. Like, it's just compared to even some of the stuff that like a couple, every now and then we'll show on like from Hyperfi, right? Like the vibe world in Hyperfi, where people were just AI creating all sorts of things. Like, and I know that there were some years in the middle there, but now the whole technology is dragged down by the associations that people had with it first, right? And it's really hard. It's really easy to make an association if you have the right platform. And it's really hard to undo an association once it's made. Yeah. So maybe Untitled.
This is a recurring theme, eh?
New technology.
Yeah, this image is funnier than the technology is powerful. You know what I mean? Like,
especially because the avatar looks, more human and more lifelike than the actual person.
That's funny.
I mean, yeah, what a like weak sauce kind of display of something. And frankly, I've said this, it's wildly unimaginative what we have done with the metaverse. We kind of stalled at the co-working desk moment and the land sale moment. We haven't really like gone strongly past that in a kind of like broad sense. I think the vibe world stuff, that is a glimpse into something far more interesting, collaborative, cooperative, mutual as a world building exercise. But when you have something that's just fully replicating the systems we have in the real world already, wildly uninventive, we have the same rules, we're going by the same logic, but with less benefit. It's like a lower resolution version of, paying for rent on your apartment. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I think, to your point, Max, yes, if we had different moments that would go viral, we would have a different narrative. I think the world that we live in now, it's just good timing in terms of people being infatuated and hate the billionaire kind of status of things. So when Zuckerberg goes and poses a selfie like this, it's just asking. I mean, I actually rebuilt this whole scene in Hyperfi at one point. I forget if I still have this live because it was so funny. It built it exactly as it looked, but I don't know.
I mean, one of the parts of this, one of the great conversations I had at MOCA was with Philip Rosedale, who's the founder of Second Life. Second Life metaverse platform, probably the most successful, certainly the most widely used metaverse platform. A life sim kind of game, as some people like to refer to it as, but that's been around since the early 2000s. And it's had hundreds of thousands, if not millions of users for basically 20 years, right? All kind of existing in a shared, mutually built space. I have this anecdote that I love to talk about where I was playing golf. This is like 2 or 3 years ago. And It was me, my father, my brother, and someone was added to our foursome. It was just in like suburban New Jersey. And I was talking to the guy, and what do you do? What do you do? I was like, oh, I'm a writer. I write about crypto and the metaverse. And he's like, oh, have you ever heard of Second Life? And I said, yeah. He turns out he operates a radio show. He's been operating a radio show in Second Life for 10 years. And I'm sure he tells people that, and they have no fucking idea what he's talking about. And my eyes lit up. I thought that was like the coolest thing. All of which is to say, is that one of the things that Philip Rosedale and I spoke about was why the metaverse isn't a thing yet. And he kept talking about the technological advancements that weren't there yet, right? The ability to, the virtual reality technology isn't there, right? Even for a camera to know, the kind of body language that you're using, that you would be using to interact with somebody in any kind of realistic space in a metaverse environment, the camera needs to know like where you're sitting, when you're leaning forward, when you're leaning back. It needs to just have so much processing power that doesn't exist right now. And I think that in some ways this is similar to the NFT discussion we were having before. Crypto is still fucking hard, right? If you want to do anything with crypto, it's still difficult, right? Yeah, you can invest easily on Coinbase, on a Robinhood, etc. But if you want to actually like be the custodian of your own coins, if you want to actually deploy these into NFTs, if you want to like connect a wallet to a website, like it's difficult. What does that say?
Sorry, this is it's mirrored, isn't it? This is actually Philip Rosedale tweeted this yesterday, and I liked it when I saw it. I thought it was interesting. 788,000 partnerships formed in Second Life. So like relationships, which is a crazy metric to track. I don't know how you track that. But and to your point, I just thought that was interesting as a coincidence. I just saw this, and I mean, people are building real relationships on these things.
Yeah,
and,
it was a plot point in like an Office episode in like 2006, right? Like there was an episode where Dwight was playing Second Life.
Yeah.
And that was 20 years ago, maybe not quite that far, but 15, 20 years ago. Like it's been around for a while. And of course, if you have millions of users and those users are incentivized in some way to split off, like they will split off with one another.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a testament to how many relationships are you going to build on Twitter besides enemies? I mean, it's like I don't know. There's a statistic there, but yeah. It is interesting. There are a few things with the tech that I feel like they're just like a short click away from really activating the immersion level. And it's very odd to see people online still making fun of it in a way that it will never happen. Like as if the final state of human existence is like this is like peak humanity is hunched over a screen like that. It just doesn't make sense. Like we are right now at one of the most ridiculous times in human history, which is the onset of AI and AGI and the onset of a virtual economy and virtual like Second Life. Like these times now, we are hitting such a crazy inflection point that the speed of the metas that we're all experiencing, the speed of technology kind of growth and declines that are going to be happening, it's just insane. So yeah, it's a special time, but it's for that reason, it's an amazing time for art and it's a terrible time for art.
Totally.
Like great to be able to see art that captures that moment. In my mind, but difficult to discover it in a way.
Anything, we kind of started this town hall with the conceit of like what defined this last year, and then we only did one. So Untitled, what, if anything, defined the metaverse to you this year?
Oh,
one of its last 4 or 5 defenders and users.
Yeah, the dozens of us are I mean, it's funny, the people that were kind of like building in this scene are still the same people that are here. It's just like you kind of had this, it's that arc of what's the meme, whatever it is. But like I think the metaverse has been the butt of the joke for a couple of years now, and I think that's fading. I don't know if that's an exciting way to put it, but
it's more interesting to give hate to AI now.
What's that?
Hating AI is so much more kind of like in than hating the metaverse.
Hating AI is very in right now, and yeah, I think I would say there are Hyperfi had quite a start of the year. There was a lot of talk around open source kind of technology, and Hyperfi has pushed that. It obviously has since gone a lot quieter in a lot of respects, and a lot of just like many other projects. But Somnium Space is really doubling down on VR. They've come out with an incredible industry-leading headset for VR, made a ton of technological advancements there, and they're doubling down on that. That's exciting. Other Side obviously is out, and it's pretty cool. Like,
Is it out?
yeah, I was walking around it. It's pretty good, and they're really leaning, to their credit, and they got a lot of crap for it. They're really leaning into it, and I think, in terms of, yeah, they're going for it. CryptoVoxel is still kind of chugging along in its own way. Decentraland, honestly, I had a interview in Decentraland with Rizzle and Fractillions like a couple weeks ago. It was really fun. And it's better. Like it's a lot better than it used to be. It's a lot easier to build in. I don't know. I feel like there are sticky things in these worlds. There's something that really gravitates from a builder perspective, and from a kind of visitor perspective. It's just fun. It's fresh. It's interesting. And I feel like that magic will grow. It might be more organic. It might be slower than everyone's anticipated, but the metaverse to me feels like an inevitable next stage of evolution for the web. And I think AI might really allow us to imagine differently about it. And I think those two in tandem, we're going to see some really interesting projects coming out. But I mean, the metaverse is dead thing it does not hold water at all. It doesn't make any sense. So,
I mean, I think the most impressed I've been by the metaverse, I have two specific moments that stand out. One was shortly after I joined the museum, going to the museum, Colborne's museum, and strapping on a Oculus headset and actually walking through the first build of the museum in Somnium Space. And the second was when you showed us the vibe world in Hyperfi, right? Actually stepping into that world and watching people create in real time, and having the ability to create things in real time, and watching this world kind of like develop in a completely collaborative way. So imaginative, so strange, so sudden and unexpected. Like, yeah. I don't know, that feels like an inflection point when, I remember like when we first made rooms, one of the thoughts that I had was that like people would get these rooms, and then they would like other artists would sell things within those rooms. They would sell furniture, they would sell wallpaper, right? They would sell all sorts of crazy things.
Yeah.
And I think what's probably a lot more interesting to people is having the ability to create it themselves, right? Not waiting for, one of the handful of people who are well versed in creating VRMs to, be able to like build a house, build furniture, build obelisks, build items, build a world into whatever they feel like. Like having just text to create commands is really, what's the word? Communal, right? And it's really accessible.
Totally. No, I think that similarly, that was a big moment for me as well, seeing that unfold, where people hop in a world and you just start prompting things into existence. It's rudimentary. It's in 3JS. It's very kind of geometric, but some of the stuff people were building, it's really wild. And generative 3D has exploded in the last 2 years. Exploded. The quality is wild. And yeah, like I think the accessibility for 3D, like the number of software that you need to kind of generate something like these guys, it's a lot. And I think that barrier is getting broken really, really quickly with AI. So yeah, I think we'll see, generative world projects that, it's not just spawning an object, it's spawning an entire storyline as you're playing it. We're going to start to see these things pop up. It just, we need the tech to kind of catch up with the imagination a bit, but we're close.
I remember when I was a kid, I was a complete World of Warcraft addict. So much so that my parents had to multiple times like keep my computer away because I couldn't be trusted with it. Either way, I reached a point at which, I was looking at endgame content, doing these raids these like big dungeons that required like 25 people. And they were basically like, at that time, there was one way of being able to do those reliably, and it was to join a guild. And it was a group of people who were all aligned, and like, this is when we do these, like we meet here at this time, and this time, on Wednesday, Tuesday, and Thursday nights, and we do these dungeons. And I remember thinking, like, even at 11, 12, I was like, this is a job now. It's not very fun, right? And then they, credit to Blizzard, who created these like tools by which you could just hop into a queue and join whoever was wanting to do these dungeons at any given time, and that completely changed the metrics of the game and my enjoyment of it at the time. It's similar with metaverse development, right? If you have this world, but you have to be contracting people to build things and talking to people and sending messages, like, it becomes a to-do.
Yeah.
Right. You would have to get in touch with an untitled XYZ. You would have to tell an untitled XYZ, what kind of thing do I want? What are you making? How do I get in touch with this? Oh, I would need to download a file and then deploy it, etc. It's just steps.
Yeah.
Steps to even be involved. And when it just becomes like, hey, I have an hour and 15 minutes and I'm interested in this now, that's the sweet spot, right? If the tools aren't available for me to become connected to the technology at the random, unpredictable moment at which I am susceptible to it, it's hard for it to be that sticky.
Yeah. And I was thinking, as you're saying that, like, I really loved Civilization, Age of Empires, and that kind of era of gaming and world building. And it just feels like we're so close. We're headed towards, you spawn in a game, and you start with 3 agents, and you assign them tasks to build things. You don't need I feel very conflicted about this, obviously, but it's part of the world we live in. You'll have an agent untitled to like design you a museum if you want to do that, or a house. You'll have an agent Daim to create art with you and explore these worlds. And I feel like, and you'll have Agent Max to
talk incessantly.
What's to talk? No, to curate the exhibit and to talk about it and to guide people through it as a docent. Like, I think we're
Agent Renee to create code-based dynamic wall textures and skybox.
Agent Renee to go with 2 pills in front of you for every visitor and tell you where the future lies. Yeah, it's gonna be weird.
It's coming.
It's gonna be so weird. Like, that's where this year might be the last normal year. You know what I mean? I feel like we're getting so close to this AGI, well, maybe not AGI next year, but like the speed of growth is getting normalized. And this past year, it felt like we started a little, I don't know. I feel like technology is going to hit this crazy inflection point. But it feels like this might be one of the last normal years in a way that humans can process it.
Fair. Daim, we have about 10 minutes left. What happened in your world in AI artistry? I'd love to know what you thought defined 2025, if there is one single thing.
I mean, I'm not sure it's one single thing, but I mean, I think it can be treated as one single thing. And really, it's what Untitled was already just talking about. It's the pace with which AI is advancing and sort of the crazy heights that it's already at. I spent, of course, a lot of time, working on the deco personalities, but I've also made, a remarkable progress on some other, like personal projects that I work on as well, and pretty much for all of it, AI was like a crucial key component. And especially when I remember back to how it was like 1 or 2 years ago. I mean, the difference is insane. And at the earliest points where I started using ChatGPT to sort of assist with coding in some way, um, it was like a kind of context poor robot, and could come up with some stuff, but the moment that you didn't phrase things just right, it like completely went off the rail, following the letter of your instruction, completely ignoring its spirit and its obvious intent when viewed by any sort of sane human lens. And now we're at a point where I'm regularly working with like Cursor, that has AI integrated in thoughtful and intelligent ways into the development process. And occasionally I will you know uh, I will give basically some high level instruction for come up with plans on how to do A, B, and C. It creates this, I don't know, like 300 to 500 word plan with sort of semi-detailed instructions,
Hmm.
and then it will execute that plan, potentially taking like 20, 30, 50 steps to go through it from beginning to end.
Wow.
And a lot of times the end result is something that in fact succeeded at what I asked for. And so AI as a programming aid has basically now gone from, again, that sort of context poor, kind of smart, but smart for a robot, dumb for a human robot, to basically being more like, I don't know, more. I would characterize it as being like a computer science student that has a poor sense of their own limitations and has a lot of blind spots.
Hmm.
So if you ask it for help with things that it's good at, it's going to be amazing. If you ask it for help with things that you're not good at, there's absolutely a chance that it will produce better code than you might have, and it will certainly do it quickly. um, and if you push it into an area where it's kind of doesn't really know what it's doing, well, you're probably not going to have a great time. But in fact, you can still eventually get to where you want to go by being smart enough to figure out where those blind spots and where those deficiencies are in its knowledge and understanding, and giving it corrections in basically the same language you might to an actual computer science student who you contracted or was working with at like a programming company.
Hmm.
And like that's crazy
And you have to
that we're at that level.
think that the bar is going to continue to get lower and lower, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, because like for every dumbass YouTube video I watch, people saying that AI has hit a wall and nothing will get better anymore. Like, clearly that's not fucking true, because things keep advancing further and further, and the advances might seem now incremental because of how far we've already come, but even those incremental advances like really really add up.
Yeah.
And and yeah, like me as a generally code based artist, um and even even a lot of the stuff I do that involves AI still often tends to have like programmed software components, whether in the generation or in pre-processing or post-processing or something. Like, most of my direct output is not art, it's code. And it's code that is 99% of the time private and never going to be seen by anyone else and never going to be used by anyone else, and doesn't have to be airtight as far as resisting exploits from North Korea or whatever else. And for stuff like that, oh my god, like shit that might take me hours to get to a point where I sort of have the scaffolding for a program to be able to begin to do things that actually produce an output, now are basically like the initial sentence or two in my very first coding agent prompt.
Crazy.
And it's taken care, and it's done right pretty much every time. And when I occasionally get to a place where the AI starts fucking up, a lot of the time I don't even get upset. I think to myself, okay, so I'm actually doing something that I can clearly see not many other people have done before, because the training doesn't contain this stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that makes me happy, and that forces me to sort of explain things in greater detail and do a bit more hand holding with the AI. But doing that does allow it to get to where I need it to go, and oftentimes doing that also can help clarify my own process and my own notions. And yeah, like that has been amazing. And the idea that that this is anything but a huge sort of civilizational advancement for all humanity in the long run is just crazy to me. I'm super optimistic about all of this. I think corporations will almost certainly try to do their best to abuse it every step of the way. But as I've said many times before, probably even on our town halls, I see that as a government issue. And our issue in the West is that our governments are fundamentally almost never on our side, on our as people's side.
We can't get into this now. This is like a 12-15 point.
Yeah.
We'll come back next year. We're going to talk about how the government's never on our side. But if I can just sum everything up quickly, I think, interestingly enough, we've all kind of said similar versions of things in our own kind of milieus, which is ironic considering it's the end of the year. But it seems that all of these places, whether it's the art of it all, the metaverse of it all, the AI of it all, it's all on a launch pad to somewhere else, right? Crypto art is going to fundamentally change in the next year, right? And we can see kind of the rockets shooting off, for better or for worse. The metaverse, the AI tooling, like all of that is just on this launch pad, ready to springboard to places that we can't necessarily predict. But the tools are there, and the pieces are there for this to happen. So interesting to be at the end of a year, and I don't know, seeing it as kind of like a preparatory moment. But when we come back in a couple of weeks, it will be 2026, and we're gonna have to see how shit develops then. Who knows what can happen in these next 2 weeks. But Untitled, Daim, thank you very much for being here. On behalf of Untitled and Daim and Colborne and Renee, thanks for being with us for another MOCA Town Hall. Thanks for being with us all through this year, and we are looking forward to seeing you all in 2026. So happy holidays, hug your loved ones, stay off of Twitter, and well, I guess now that we're not doing town halls, there's no reason to go onto Twitter. And be well, and we'll see you next